Alex,
How you doing?
how you doing, man?
Yeah, very well. We just found out we're number one in the midweek charts, which is
No
good.
way!
What was
Oh, that's
number one?
outstanding, guys!
Yeah,
Congratulations. That's
thank you very
great.
much.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So,
Cheers.
cheers, dude. I have a tea, but you know what? I'll tea for you, man. That that's good, man. That's good. So, wow, what a past week for you guys, huh?
Yeah, I mean it's been incredible just with everything that's going on. I mean, sort of the whole COVID thing, pushing and moving our album, sort of going to the Black Lives Matter protests in London this week, which has been
Yeah.
unbelievably powerful. And now this album is it's very mixed emotions.
Jesus Christ, so much, man. What a year. So let's start there. I obviously want to get to your outstanding new album, Deep Down Happy. But,
Mm,
let me go a little bit backwards and ask you first about current event, Alex, because you
mm.
briefly mentioned on it. And I think that this week it's responsible to ask about the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests. What's your take on all this? Let's start there.
I mean, we feel sort of just an enormous. I think, like everyone else, we saw the images in the US and we're just kind of like viscerally appalled by it, just sort of kind of like sickened by seeing the images. And I think that sort of you see the protests in the US and you want to do something out of solidarity in the UK, which is why we've gone on the marches here. But then I think as you sort of like try to educate each other and you try to read more, you realise the extent to which it's sort of such a unique history of racism in the UK, at least, and sort of the history
Yeah.
of that, which has got its own sort of like its own quirks, its own problems. So last night in Bristol, they tore down a statue of a slave trader and threw it in the docks, which has been there for ages. And I think when we went on the marches in London, it was because we live in quite a black neighbourhood. I think traditionally black at least,
Hmm.
uh, and so the march came past our house and people were coming out of the balconies and sort of joining it from their houses and things. And it went all the way to Brixton. I think for us, it just felt like such a sort of incredible, powerful moment. It made us think, was it just what can we do and how can we use our platform to help this in any way possible? Because we're not perfect. Like we're flawed characters, the six of us. And it just the mood of seems to have been at least kind of like educate each other and try and be better, and not about condemning people that want to do the right thing, but just trying to help each other towards something that feels better than yesterday.
Yeah, man, absolutely, dude, absolutely. Well said, and thank you for sharing that. Okay, now that we got the serious stuff out of the way, let me talk about first of all, 2020. I mean, we curse here on this podcast, on this show. What a fucked up year, right? How has 2020 been for you, Alex? Like, and for you and for the band.
Well, it's been amazing. So we finished recording, and then it's been a sort of incredible sort of change of mindset because we were supposed to be out with you guys in like Mexico City for a week and things like that, which was probably the thing we were most excited about all year.
Yeah,
And have that sort of that very quick mindset change where you suddenly go from that to kind of being locked down at home, not even be able to like go out for a drink or something like that.
sure.
It's been, I think very, very strange for us. But I think we've used it well. It's been about moving towards kind of like trying to think about album two already and sort of getting in
Hmm.
the studio, demoing that, and
That's
just
cool.
pushing forward. And yeah,
That's good, man. That's good, dude. And yeah, man. And you guys strike me like such a restless band. You got so much energy live, Alex. Especially you, dude. You're like a firecracker on stage. I imagine it must have been hard since like March to kind of be like shackled a little bit.
I think so. And like obviously there are kind of worse things in the world than not playing live. But I think for us, suddenly not doing it, having come from a place of playing like 150 live shows in a year, is you realise how much you get out of it, and you realise how
Yeah,
sort of cathartic it is for you as a person. Like so, you get so much of yourself and your anxiety and sort of like your energy, as you say, just out when you go on stage. And it's trying
absolutely.
to find somewhere to sort of put that restlessness when you're sort of trapped at home. I mean, I'm not someone who loves kind of being in a studio or like tinkering with music. That's no way my favorite thing to do. We're all in a band because we want to go out and play live, and be a rock band, and go around the world with our mates.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great. So let's work backwards a little bit, Alex. I want to ask you a little bit about your childhood, because there's a tons of stories about Cambridge and all that. But did you grow up in a musical family? Like, what were your like first like musical DNA? Where did this come from?
Um, I don't know. I think we always went to gigs. My childhood, at least. I know my mum was in a band. My mum lived sort of. I've got like this is propped on her 12-string guitar actually at the moment.
Oh, no way. That's cool. Okay.
But she was in a band, and she always tells a story about having gone on a talent show with her mates.
Oh, yeah.
First time they'd ever been given in-ears or something like that. So it never panned out. But I think my mum at least has always just loved music, and you sort of that sense that you do music for the love of it, not for any success or to try and get anywhere. And I definitely never in my life thought I would be in a band. I was someone who sort of enjoyed music for just like the pleasure of it, and it's something I'd do if no one knew I was doing it.
Yeah, that's great, man. And how did you guys meet? Was it in Cambridge? Did someone put a note on, King's College Chapel? Like, how did you guys meet?
So I think we were always just kind of like music obsessives, and like there aren't many people who like the sort of music we do. We're the kind of kids that would sit in our rooms and listen to like Pavement B-sides, but that had all these kind of formative experiences as kids when we were like 14 years old, and it'd be the first time you got to London and you'd be at a gig, and it'd be the first time you managed to get a drink at the bar and see bands like Woo Life and Egyptian hip hop, and that sort of sense of excitement that this is going to be the biggest thing in the world. And of course. Like these bands, like no one knows who they are anymore. But in the time you got yourself worked into this frenzy about it being this incredible scene, and that was all you wanted to be part of. So I think I always at least saw the kind of like people on stage and felt a bit jealous of that. I think probably more from just like an attention-seeking perspective than anything else, than being like, oh, I'd love to make music like that. It's like, I just wanted to be on stage.
That's a good filter, I think, to just make music friends. Like, do you like Egyptian hip hop? No? I guess we just can't do. I don't care that you have the qualities, That's awesome, dude. Okay, great. So, you've skyrocketed pretty fast into where you are right now, #1 album. That's awesome, man. Does that come are you like you told me you're thinking about album #2? There's a saying in the industry, I'm sure you've heard of that, like you have your whole life to make your first album and a couple of years to make your second, I guess. Do you sense a little bit of like, oh shit, like now we have like something to live up to, a little bit of pressure?
Definitely. I think we recognise how sort of fickle the whole industry is. I mean, if you kind of go away and don't release music for 6 months, no one's going to sit there waiting for your next album, however big the first one's got or how well it's done. So I think we're kind of conscious that you have to like really strive and really like want the success that you get at this stage, like because it doesn't come easy. And it's not like, I mean, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, being #1 in the midweek charts, you'd be a rich man. But at the moment, it's us sitting around, like if you play live enough, you can just about make enough money to sort of rent a house with your bandmates and kind of get by a wage. So I think the success, at least, will never sort of change our lives at the moment. So I think we're always going to be a group of 6 people that live together in the same house, that kind of make fun of each other and like keep each other pretty grounded about the whole thing. So I think pressure, and I think the sort of mode of writing we have as well is very sort of live-centered. Like all the songs, we could sort of talk forever about like the sort of deeper meaning, and there is sort of a lot of social commentary in there about kind of what modern Britain, where it is at the moment.
Yeah.
But more than anything, it's just kind of like a rock album. It's just meant to be played live. And that's how it's always kind of getting off a ferry at 4 a.m. and managing to squeeze in like one quick day in the studio and then straight back off for another tour date where you could kind of like test the stuff you've done on stage.
Yeah, for sure.
These shows again, which is more about, rather than kind of structure and thoughtfulness, it's about kind of like the visceral, like just compelling and powerful nature of songs, which you never really lose as long as you've got that energy and that desire to do something.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. Your passion just comes through. It's really fascinating. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about what you said about keeping it real. Is it true that you guys had a WhatsApp group with your fan group, right? Do you still have that group? No, it's impossible.
Yeah, we do. I mean, they've all got, I think that's probably one of the things about our band. Like we are genuinely incredibly close to know them, and they've got our numbers, and they come out our house.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome, man.
I started off just like the first time when we were going to gigs, we were always so appreciative when we used to go to shows of bands that would just like stick around at the end and chat to you a bit, and you'd meet them and be, oh, incredible, best day of my life. So I think it started off, our first shows, we would always consciously try and do that.
I
And then
can't
you end
imagine that chat. I'm sorry to interrupt. I can't imagine, like, just with this quarantine, I have one with my family and they're driving me nuts. Can't imagine, like, them arguing about the best version of Kutcher Life. Oh, it's in Sheffield and this. I can't even imagine, man. It's been nuts.
exactly, but and I think people might look at it and think like, oh, like what, like a brilliant marketing ploy, like, because a lot of bands do that and would want to kind of build that sense of community. But I think it's so nice how kind of completely independent of us it all seems to operate. I mean, we don't really post in it or use this WhatsApp group or the community forum. It's completely sustained by them, and they make their own artwork and they make memes, like thousands of memes. But they know they can get in touch with us if they ever need guest list or they ever even like somewhere to stay or like they're in a bit of trouble or need advice or something. So I think it feels nice, and I think there's so few sort of senses of community in the world at the moment. In Britain, at least, you've lost a lot of the sort of more traditional things that you might have provided a sense of community for you, and live music still has that, I think.
Yeah, for sure, Alex. No, and I do want to get to Deep Down Happy in a minute and your songwriting. But okay, you've been so busy. You're such a busy guy, man. You're doing all these things. You're like pushing out new music, recording new stuff. You also have your own label, Homefront, which is, and you found some really good stuff in there. Like you found the Dutch group Personal Trainer. It's a really good 12-piece band, Wild Disco, Ugly. Dude, like, I gotta ask you, man, like, how do you balance all these things, man? Like, do you secretly live, don't sleep? Like, what's the tip here? How do you do it, man?
Well, we definitely don't sleep much, but for us, they was always about, I don't know, I'm quite, I spit in, but I get in trouble for it sometimes. I speak about bands I like, but also bands I don't like. And I think we wanted to kind of basically like put our money where our mouth was in a way and say, like, all right, like if we're going to kind of go out and be a bit gobby and say these things, then we should be prepared to kind of release bands that we think are brilliant and say to the world, like, incredible music. And I think when you go around the world as well, you do see amazing new bands like that you would never usually be exposed to, and the kind of scene you're a part of wouldn't be exposed to. So Personal Trainer, we were staying with our mates Pit Blom in we were just sort of staying there to see them, I think. They took us to a party at their rehearsal studio and Personal Trainer were playing. And I think we all turned around and were just like, this is unbelievable. Like, it's incredible. I mean, like, we've got to get them kind of in the UK. Like, it'll do so well, like, if they get any form of a profile. And they're just an amazing live band. So that's what it's always been for us. And I think at the end of the day, it's not that hard to release and to get a record pressed, Like when you've got, I think we're quite lucky in the sense that we've got contacts in the music industry now. So there are ways we can actually help quite easily, like send their song to radio and we can kind of tell people in the press about this band and they'll hopefully listen to us now. So we can actually have the power to give them a profile.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, well, that's great. I mean, it definitely sounds complex, but that's awesome. That's great that you're helping in that way, Alex. So, new album, Deep Down Happy. It just came out last Friday, and you just heard the man himself, #1 on the midweek charts. Fantastic album. It actually gets better. I've heard it like 5 times now. Better every repeat. It's layered. It's phenomenal. Cynicism, dash of sarcasm, but also like power and happiness. That's that's the base, and that's what I like. You did this album, of course, with Australian-Canadian producer Burke Reed, who worked a little bit with Courtney Barnett. Just wondering, what did he bring to the table to like mesh it all together?
I think it was that kind of, it was sort of a coherence to the sound, definitely, because he's like a real guitar guy. And I think because when you're writing stuff, it's quite sort of easy to want to sort of experiment and like try new sounds and throw stuff that sounds like cool out here and there. But I think at the end of the album, it sort of feels like it sounds like us, and it sounds like we've got a sound. But also, he hasn't done the thing which I think would be the temptation to kind of smooth everything out. Because I think there's always this sort of kind of, like, the appeal of a band for me is that it's a dynamic between 6 people, and you hear the kind of fights in it, and you hear like the love between people in the record, and it's not perfect, and it's scrappy in parts, and you hear like little bits of harmonica out of tune and things. And the fact that he also got like that amateurishness was part of the charm as well, I think. And so a lot of it's done, like he would always make us do sort of one take, was what he was big on. He would never give sort of the studio tricks. Like, I was always desperate for him to just auto-tune my vocal, and he would just do it. He was like, so he'd make you sit there and get it. So it has this sort of live feel to it. So I think it's incredible.
That's interesting because it does come across. That's great. And you know, your songs, Alex, and your songwriting is quite beautiful, sometimes in their simplicity. And I know you've talked ad nauseum about this a little bit, but like one of your first songs, Stanton, about the fire warden at Cambridge, just how seriously he took his job, just mundane little things, or Margate, about the seaside town in England. Tell us about the songwriting process for songs like this, how you just distill something so simple and make like a universe out of it, if you will.
So I should say, but it's mainly Rob in the band who writes a lot of the songs.
Gotcha.
He'll come with sort of like the bones of something, I'd say, and then we work it up live. But I think we've all like got this sort of fascination with kind of doing social commentary, but doing it through characters and doing it in this sort of sardonic way. So
Yeah.
I don't really ever want to patronize people is the key. So I think if you really listen to it, you sort of hear our point of view on things, but it's not sort of shoved down your throat like it might be on another record. So I think that's what it comes from, just this point of fascination, I think, with kind of just like the foibles of British culture and these kind of absurd characters that you encounter so often. I mean, I don't think we come from this place of sort of recognising how much a part of that system we are personally, but also recognising the sort of absurdity of everything that goes around it. And I think it's that kind of just bizarreness that we always try to capture.
Yeah, and you capture it well, and even in your videos you do, right? Like in Here It Comes Again, great video. There's even a little petting of a goat, reminiscent of the Beach Boys' pet sound.
Yeah,
That's the first thing that comes to mind. Was that on purpose, just out of curiosity, or coincidence? It's
I think
genius.
that what most of it is. I think we always love like records like the Pavement ones and stuff, where there's so many layers to delve into. Like you can be an obsessive, and it goes into like the artwork and the kind of like little cryptic notes we put in things, and the way you speak to fans and the way you announce things, and it lends itself to being an obsessive, our band, I think.
Epic, Alex. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, I think, my favorite song, Stations of the Cross. Cracker of a song, man. It must not have been easy to write, you know, about religion, if you will. But it's a great closer. I'm just curious, like how did you guys find that right balance, you know, to do it?
I think someone said it sounds a bit like kind of Bowie and things like that, and I think it's definitely got a bit of that in it. It definitely feels the most like dancey and rhythmic, and has that kind of driving beat behind it. But I think where the sort of religious element comes in was like you do. I think the longer you're involved in this game, the more you sort of start to do kind of self-assessment and wonder like who you are and wonder about your own place in the world. So it's kind of that. Like it's a sort of like a looking back at the last few years, a bit like kind of almost like a comic book story, like full of imagery, but also sort of with all these like overtold stories. You must have been in like groups of mates where someone tells the same story over and over again. So it's that kind of overwrought emotion, but sort of just like the sense of terror at how you're living. I think there's a phrase here, I don't know, at least about like Protestant guilt that some people feel. And I think there's a lot of that in us. Is like, are we doing enough? Like, is this kind of routine we built enough? Like, do we want more? Because we always have this sort of sense of yearning, and there probably is a sort of slightly religious element to a lot of that. So it's that searching and like grasping nature of it we really wanted to put in.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, a couple more questions and I'll let you go. You've been so generous with your time, dude. This has been great. Appreciate it, man. So you're midweek number one. I'm just curious, you know, the British music press is famous for, you know, for hyperbole. The biggest band in the world, you know, they're bringing punk back, indie pop. You know, are you ready to carry that mantle, or have they met? I think they've met their match with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, they don't tend to say that about us too much. I think they might have finally shaken that off. I mean, I'd love it if they did say we're going to say punk or whatever it is. But I don't know. I think like there's always this sense that about not being complacent, because like guitar music, especially, and alternative music in the UK, is in a really good place. I mean, we look at bands like Fontaine's DC and Shame and Sorry and Working Men's Club and stuff, and the music's brilliant. And it's all centered on these kind of live shows that have this huge sort of sense of community around them, and these important events, and they're a party. So it's building on that. I think for us, it's saying, I mean, we sort of look back. We sort of joke about it quite a lot, but like Oasis at Nebworth or something like that, where kind of community extends not just with your smaller group of fans, but out towards like a whole nation and globally. And I think that's what we see, and that's when it gets amazing, when everyone has this shared experience, because there are again very few sources of genuinely shared experience in the world.
Right. Right, like
And
when the whole Britain starts singing Champagne Supernova at like a World Cup,
yeah,
like on the street, something like that, right?
exactly. So I think when we're kind of ambitious about it, and when we say like, and it's going great, like we couldn't be happier with how it's going at the moment, but we always do want more because we think it gets better the more you get. So I'm never a fan of sort of guitar music, especially like patting itself on the back and everyone like congratulating each other and be like, it's back, like here we go. 'Cause it's got a long way to go still, I think.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah. I think here in America lately, there's been that discussion about is rock dying or what's happening to rock and roll a little bit, and there's some interesting things happening. I think a lot of people think that country actually has a lot of rock coming out of it, the newer country, like Jason Isbell or that kind of stuff. But yeah, I hear you, man. I think it's coming back.
And I
Wanted to
think
ask you. Go ahead.
on that, I think people like we speak to our fans at least, and they're sort of they got less concerned by genre. Like they're like people who are pop music fans now seem very happy to go and listen to like a punk band or rock like that, which I think is a bit different. Like people don't tether themselves to a genre in the same way anymore, which is great.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Alex, you seem like you have such great musical taste. So I'm just curious if you can tell us what are you playing? What are some musical jewels that you're listening to that you want to share with the world? What's on your playlist nowadays?
And I think the new Fiona Apple album is brilliant.
Yes.
Just the way she sort of throws her voice around is
Phenomenal.
amazing. Like how it breaks and kind of the vulnerability of it, but still being this really powerful album. I mean, we listen to a lot of old rock and stuff. Like we've started getting really into Richard Hell recently.
Oh, nice.
I like Blank Generation, songs like that. But so much. I listened to the other day even that kind of like Run the Jewels album, and it's not a band I've heard before, but I heard Killer Mike's speech and I was like, I've got to give this a listen. And almost like our Apple album, it's got this kind of this sense of anger and sort of and shock and being appalled at the state of the situation, but also this sort of optimism that comes with it and say, okay, there is a way this gets better, and bringing people together does mean you can make a better world.
Yeah, they're very good, and like you guys are like a live band. I mean, you guys obviously the album's great, but like live is where you get the full experience. They're a little bit like that as well. Oh man, Alex, you've been so generous with your time, dude. This has been so fun.
It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, man. How are you gonna celebrate today?
I don't know. It's hard. Everyone's on the roof at the moment, so I think we can get quite drunk up there and then see where it goes.
Sounds safe by me. Perfect. Awesome. Take care, my brother. Congratulations. Bye, man.